Today on the show, Danny calls in to share things that you should be considering at the end of the year with the HSA. Lee has a question about traditional IRAs. Ruth shares how to protect elderly family members from predatory subscriptions. And James shares a life hack for graphic designers. Welcome to the ultimate crowdsourced personal finance show. This is your Friday Roundup.
You're listening to ChooseFI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. ChooseFI, your home for financial independence online.
Hey guys, super excited to get a chance to talk about this past week's episode with Deanna from MissBiology.com. It was a absolutely wonderful episode, and there's so many valuable takeaways here, and I can't wait to hop into it. And to help me with this, I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jonathan, I am doing quite well. And yeah, that to me was unquestionably the most powerful episode we've ever had. And that's saying a lot. It was just one of those that just hit me, no matter, I've listened to it 3 or 4 times at this point, and it really just continues to impact me. So can't wait to talk about that. But yeah, first, what's going on by you?
Well, the biggest thing is, and it's actually inspired by this episode, I wanted to mention a lot of her story talked about the reconciliation between her and her parents, and specifically her and her father. And while I don't have anything near as dramatic to talk about, I do have this awesome story from this past Thanksgiving weekend where I went to go visit my family. And you know how she mentioned that by living with her parents for several years, she really got a wonderful sense of what they actually needed. Well, when I went to go visit my parents, it's very obvious one of the things that they need help with is the jungle that is slowly encroaching on their home. So I have this small battery-powered chainsaw that we have for just some shrubs and stuff in our yard, and I took it with us. And me and my dad spent literally 8 hours between the day before and the day of Thanksgiving. How did you spend your Thanksgiving? Cutting down small trees. We spent the entire day cutting down these trees. And not only was it fun, awesome, and active, but it really was a great bonding experience. I had a wonderful time doing it, and it just tied so well to what Deanna was talking about that I thought it was worth mentioning. But the larger point is just that battery-powered chainsaws rock, man, in a world where I don't want to own anything else that I have to mix oil and gasoline into. You know how you have to like measure it out 20 to 1, 30 to 1, whatever it is. I would have never suspected that a battery-powered chainsaw could carry weight or do what it needs to do, but it's probably the most perfect device ever designed, and it has one function and it performs it flawlessly.
That's really cool. It's funny. You started with this intense bonding experience with you and your dad, and then it goes into, wow, battery-powered chainsaws are amazing. That's,
I have
classic
trouble,
Jonathan.
I have trouble with serious moments. I need levity.
All right, but let's go back to the serious stuff for a minute. So 8 hours with your dad with a power tool can potentially devolve into arguing, fighting, etc. How did you navigate that? What did this actually look like when you're spending this time together?
You know, it's one of those things that it was actually not like a ton of talking. We weren't hashing out old conversations, but it was just, we were doing an activity together. I mean, there's something to be said for that, even in adulthood, to have common purpose with someone that you care about deeply. And it was awesome. I mean, it kind of is it's a gateway into other activities. So I don't know. To me, it reminded me that you only have a limited time on earth. How are you spending it? And all of us prioritize things at different times in life, but the time you have with your loved ones is precious. And I really enjoyed that. And it made me think, I want to come back and follow up on this because they have a jungle encroaching on their house and we were only able to put 8 hours into it. It needs several weeks of attention. I'm going to go back and finish this job.
And you get to buy other gadgets of new power tools, I suspect.
All you need is one battery-powered chainsaw. This episode brought to you by the unnamed chainsaw of 2018. And Brad, you know, what's actually funny about this, just because I know a little bit about your home life and personal situation, is that it actually kind of goes the other way in your family in that your in-laws are amazing and actually know what you need. And I believe they make it a regular mission, to come help you with your landscaping.
Yeah, they are amazing. Laura's parents, Chris and Janet, they every single time they come down here, and they're down probably once a month at this point, even though they live in New York and we're down in Virginia, they are down here and they're always helping us. And obviously, part of me feels really badly about this, that I basically have landscapers who live in New York, but they really do enjoy it, and they just love being outside and help. I think helping us is really what it boils down to. And Laura's dad, he's this gardener extraordinaire, and he's always planting new things and, I don't know, just experimenting with different plants. I think it's a different environment down here in hotter Virginia than it is on Long Island. And it's fun. And obviously, I'm the lucky beneficiary of this. And, as you know, Jonathan, I do not love doing any type of housework or gardening. I think in my perfect world, I would, I don't know, maybe live in a condo or some such and not have any outdoor work. I mean, very selfishly, it does work out pretty well for me, but it is kind of fun to learn from them and help out here and there where I can, certainly. And, it's funny, I actually had a similar experience as you had with your dad with my mom. She was down a couple of weeks ago, and in our new house, we had this like whole line of hedges, and they were just way out of control. The people who own the house probably hadn't cut them in years. And my mom literally went to the store, bought this hedge trimmer, and was out there doing the work. And I'm like, I didn't even know she was doing this. I went out and joined her, and we were probably out there for a couple hours, and she took the lower hanging stuff. I got up on the ladder, and it was fun. And it was a nice sense of accomplishment. I mean, the things look like $1 million when we're done with them. And like you said, it was a good bonding experience. And I can't point to anything in particular, but it's just nice to spend time with people, and certainly outdoors as well. I mean, don't discount that.
And Brad, as I kind of led with, that ties so well to the themes that Deanna was talking about on this past week's episode. And I think both of us recognize the privilege that we have to be able to spend this time and be able to design a life that allows us to do that. You, both from the place of actually having hit financial independence, but frankly, me, still on the path, having been able to achieve some level of that. When we talk about engineering your life and designing your future long before you reach financial independence, this is, for me, an exact example of what that practically looks like. I realize that when I'm planning my schedule for the year now, I look at what does our family want to do? What do we want to prioritize? And then based on whatever that is, that red X month, if you remember, we talked about that with Vincent Puglisi, we decide that first, and then we build our work schedules and what the time that we're going to be putting in around that. And like, that is the ultimate luxury.
Yeah, I think that family time is something that we are so fortunate to have. And people in the FI community who are on this path can have this luxury of really prioritizing what's important in life. And like you're saying, the Red X month, at this point, I have a Red X 3 months. It's June, July, and August are my family time. Does that mean I'm going to work 0 on ChooseFI in those 3 months? No, but realistically, like Jonathan, you and I try to front load all of our Monday episodes, so I can have that time in the summer. This is my frolicking in the pool time. And then, our August is the time where we take a big trip. And this summer we're going to Maui and spending 3 weeks there. And I mean, it's amazing that I have this opportunity and that I get to spend this time with my kids when they're so young. Deanna was saying, don't sacrifice the time with your family and your children. Your children just want to see their parents present. I mean, I think we all have to try better. There are times where I'm on the phone and I'm just kind of scrolling through something and I feel like a terrible parent because my daughter Molly is asking me something and I'm just giving her half attention. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is not me standing on high and saying how great I am. It's nothing like that. This is a work in progress for all of us. But at its essence, kids want time with their parents. And that was a huge lesson for me from this Deanna episode.
Oh man, you nailed it. And I think it's one of the things that had me in tears. One of the kind of stereotypes of who is pursuing FI is that it's just single white male software engineers, and to me, the why is so much more powerful when you have family. And I think that's why you see the messaging becoming so much more well-rounded and frankly, so much more appealing, because when you realize that whatever benefits that stereotype may have, those are multiplied almost exponentially when you realize the impact that it has on your kids. And Deanna made this such a profound quote, and I'm going to have to paraphrase because I didn't write it down, but it was something to the effect of, kids, they don't understand deadlines. They don't understand meetings. They don't understand the need to work overtime, all these other things. They just want your interaction. this pursuit of financial independence allows us to reclaim and reprioritize those precious moments that we can never get back. It's been amazing for me to see just the impact that my presence has had on my son's development to this point, just his excitement and engagement that he has when he sees me and we get to do our regular routines together. We're reading like 5 to 8 books a day now between me and his mom. And just to have that time at really random times to sit down, he'll bring me Red Truck and Little Blue Truck. I don't know if they're friends. I don't know if they're competitors, but apparently they have very different takes on life. And we read those books constantly and he never gets tired of it. He goes and he grabs it off the bookshelf and he brings to me and just sits down. And, we make this joke that kids don't have to be expensive. My son, his favorite thing, and frankly, our favorite thing, is this oversized cardboard box that has a bunch of stuffed animals in it. And we sit there several times a day, just laying down on our backs and going through one of these books. And it's so gratifying to see the joy on his face when we get to do this together.
Yeah, that's amazing. I agree 100% with what you just said about that why. And it doesn't matter what your family or life situation looks like. Undoubtedly, you have connections, you have family, friends, and connecting with those people and finding that why for what the reason is behind this whole thing. That is essential to me. And yeah, Deanna was saying how her father was a salesman and he poured himself into his career. And she thought her parents certainly did the best that they could. But these interactions with her father were few and they were volatile. She realized she could get attention by acting out, and she lacked that security. A quote that just stuck out to me that she said was, if you are a parent of young children and you're able to fire, do it. If you're able to take a sabbatical while your children are young because of the financial choices you've made, do it. So don't sacrifice that time with your family and especially your children. And that just really resonated with me, especially in light of Deanna's story, certainly.
And Brad, one of the reasons that this episode was so powerful for me was the level of agency. One of the themes that I kind of see when I hear other people talking about this from the outside is, oh, well, this works if it all goes perfectly. But what about when it doesn't? I think it goes back to, what is the story you tell yourself about yourself? And you get to pick the frame. You get to pick that. If you look at life through the lens of this only works if it goes perfectly, which is kind of like almost like a victim mentality, life is happening to me, then your results will mirror that to some varying degree. But I didn't see that with Deanna. I saw this extreme agency. And so you have this individual that frankly has gone through stuff that I will never experience, has had a harder life than many of the people listening to this have had, who have had struggles that they have had to deal with that many of us thankfully have not had to deal with. She would be the first one to say, I hope you never have to deal with this. And look at the ownership, look at the agency, look at what she's going to be able to accomplish in a relatively short period of time. We get to pick our story. And it's not saying that life is going to be perfect. Life is not going to be perfect. But if you focus on controlling what you can control and then treat it like a game, like a problem, without doubt, you will be in better shape than someone that doesn't contemplate these issues or take action around them.
Yeah, it is remarkable how that mental frame, and it's all in your own head, right? It's the same reality. But whatever that mental frame is, that's what ultimately impacts the outcome of your life. And I mean, I know that sounds significant, but it's so true, right? Think about the stories Deanna could tell herself. Oh, poor me. I have to live with my parents in my 40s. I have $100,000 in debt. I had this incredibly difficult addiction and oh, poor me. Or she could take agency and she could look at it and say, like she said, with her Finding Dave Ramsey, and she found, quote, a great amount of freedom telling her money where to go. That's the sign of someone who is looking at life through their own agency. Everything she has been through has, quote, chiseled me into the woman I am today, so I regret nothing. Wow, that gives me chills just saying it. To come full circle, to spend this year and a half with her parents and make amends and just come out with a relationship that means something to her. This is the path this woman took, and it's remarkable, right? She paid off all this debt. She is in this career where she's doing exceptionally well. And she talked about getting these amazing raises that are so far outside of the norm, and she's crushing it. And it's because she took that view that all of this chiseled me into the woman I am today. If she can do it, we all can do it. It's about the frame you take on your own life. It's either, oh, poor me, or I'm going to do this. Why wouldn't you take the latter and say, I'm going to do this? And you can take that in every aspect of your life. Guys, this is the meat of life. This is the meat of financial independence. This is the meat of everything you need to do to be successful. So please, please take this to heart. This is crucial.
And we can't just walk away from it. We have to spend more time thinking about this, because I guarantee you, every single episode that we've done up to this point, there has been somebody listening that has had the thought, well, that sounds great, but they haven't had to deal with this. It doesn't work for me because I don't make that. It doesn't work for me because I have these extenuating factors. And the crazy thing is, if that's you, it's been me. I guarantee you it's been me. So it's not, you're never above this. You're going to have aspects of this in all parts of your life at varying different times. But if you notice that and observe that reality, you can then change course and correct it and change the question, change the observation to something that gives you more agency. Again, I think that's the overriding theme on this. How do you claim agency? It's by recognizing a limiting belief. And here it is. No matter how bad you have it, if you're listening to the show, no matter how bad you have it, I guarantee you there's someone that had it worse and figured out a way to make it through that. Just slow down on that and just think about it. Think about how powerful that is. Somebody that had more obstacles than you did looked at the problem a little bit differently and was able to find a way out, was able to find a solution. It's not that right now I have every answer for you, but frankly, we haven't had a chance to document every single story. That's one of our goals over the coming years, is to find and highlight these stories, because there is a solution. It's not the same solution. The same tactics that worked for me isn't exactly what Deanna's doing, but there is a solution and someone else has figured it out. And since we are not reliant on just my knowledge base or Brad's knowledge base, this show is about our community. Think about Deanna's story. Deanna was in our community, and now Deanna is adding to the lexicon. She's adding to the knowledge base. And how many people downstream is that having an impact on, whose lives are radically altered by the fact that you could battle addiction for 15 years and then claw your way out and still reach financial independence before your golden years? I mean, that's incredible. And it provides us with opportunities, because how many people listen to that and say, wow, now actually that was tough, and I thought I had it bad, but I haven't had to deal with any of that. And frankly, I'm in a better place. And if she can do it, why can't I? Imagine that. That's the frame. When you look at everything, just figure out what piece of every episode you can use. Don't say, well, that is someone that lived in a low cost of living area, and so I can disregard everything that they did because they don't know my situation. No, look for the piece of this that you can use. With every single episode that's featured, there is something that's going to be actionable. Take what works and discard the rest, and then build a portfolio of ideas that thrust you to a better place. And the most important thing, obviously, it's not just the ideas, it's that you choose to take action on those ideas. That's what this has to be, and that's why it's a life optimization strategy, and that's why we're so passionate about being a part of it. And we'll be talking about this more next week, but this show is a little bit different than, frankly, any other show that I've ever listened to. And that happened partially, we had this thought from the beginning, but it's become more obvious the farther that we go down this path. This is not the Brad and Jonathan show. The power of ChooseFI has been almost from inception that it highlights what our community is actually doing. Think about this. Just think about this for just a second. If this is a 10 to 15 year path, how many of you were already on this path in some varying degree and are going to reach financial independence over the next several years and have a very unique take on it? Like, for instance, you've been in a trade, or in Deanna's case, you battled through addiction, or you had a prison sentence, or whatever that may be, whatever that path, that unique path actually looked like. How many of the people in this community have a meandering, unique take on it? Our opportunity, our privilege is going to be able to document all of those paths to financial independence and put them back into the community to highlight and inspire. And we need your help with that. And so many of you, and we're very grateful for it, for our end of year episode, which we're going to release next week, have sent in your voicemails of the progress and the action that you take. And this is going to be a thing going forward. Many of you, like Deanna, found the FI community through this podcast and then started aligning your priorities with reaching financial independence. And you took your own meandering path to get there. And then almost in a virtuous circle, which is a term that Brad has kind of used many times over the last 2 years, we're going to be able to take that perspective and put it back into the community through voicemails, through emails, through messages, and through interviews on the show. And we are just going to continue to get better together, and we are going to reach financial independence together. That's our commitment to you, to be here to empower, to motivate, encourage on this path. And Brad, I'm very excited to be able to do that episode next week. I think it's going to be something that we will carve out for the end of every year, to have that end of year episode be able to highlight the progress from our community. How many people will reach financial independence or engineer their lives along the way as a result of being tied to this community?
Yeah, I love it. I think we try to bring in a lot of wins throughout the year on this Friday Roundup. But yeah, that last Friday Roundup of the year, I think will always, from here on out, will always be that kind of grand summary of you, of the community, because that's what this is all about. So yeah, as always, thank you. And yeah, I'm personally looking forward to the episode next week. I can't wait.
And what I've done is I've made sure that you have not heard any of the voicemails, so you'll be hearing all of them for the first time. And one other thing is that one of our most popular posts in our Facebook group is your post on Fridays. What is the one thing that you've done? And think about every single week that gets somewhere in between 200 to 1,000 responses. Every single week, people taking action week after week to improve themselves by 1%, to improve their finances by 1%. And imagine when you've been doing that for 52 weeks, that aggregation of marginal gains, to be able to report back on this on a show once a year and say, here's my update. Here's where my family is. Imagine how this grows into the future and what this can be. So a huge thank you for Deanna for being willing to share her story, her vulnerability, and just how she has, again, taken agency over this situation. We are so excited to be able to just watch her on this journey to financial independence. It's absolutely incredible. All right, well, let's go ahead and play some voicemails from our community. And first, I wanted to play one that we got from Danny Kinney, who has a financial planner blog. He was also a CFP on a roundtable that we did earlier this year. Brad, what episode was that roundtable?
Yeah, Jonathan, that was episode 58, our quote unquote annual CFP roundtable with Danny and Kyle.
Yeah, we did say annual. Are we going to do another one at the beginning of next year?
I think we probably should.
We need to come up with...
If it's going to be annual, I think we might have to.
Maybe it's biannual? No, we can do annual. We just need to get a good list of questions to run by them. I think that should be one of the things. Maybe individuals that have listened to that episode, send us your follow-up questions, and let's see if we can go a little bit deeper with this next one. But we'll plan that out. Danny is weighing in with just a thought on something that individuals should be considering each year, just kind of these different action points that you should be considering each year. And this time he's weighing in on kind of a follow-up to episode 102R, where we talked about HSAs. He has a thought on what individuals should be considering each year with that.
Hi, Brad and Jonathan. This is Danny calling in. I blog on your site under the name of Financial Planner, and I was the CFP on the CFP Roundtable about a year ago. I just listened to the episode 102R, where you discussed the benefits of an HSA and investing inside your HSA, and as well as the capital gain distributions and how those work. For the investing inside the HSA, I wanted to touch on one item that may save quite a bit of expenses depending on the structure of your HSA at work. So usually if there are investment options inside your HSA at work, they're in high expense ratio funds or having other fees. One of the strategies that I use and recommend for my clients is that once per year, you're allowed to do a distribution from your HSA through the work plan. So you're able to do a rollover similar to an IRA rollover, where you're rolling it out to an external HSA custodian like Fidelity that you mentioned in the episode, or I use TD Ameritrade. So that's a great option. So you can do that once per year, get the funds out and into lower cost mutual funds or investment options. On the capital gain distributions, the ways those work is when you make an investment into the mutual fund, the fund company purchases stock with your or bonds with your investment. Now, when they have to sell stock to generate cash for distributions, if someone sells their shares, then any gain that was incurred on their portfolio between the purchase of the underlying holdings and when they have to sell, that's a capital gain that is incurred by the mutual fund, and that gets distributed out to shareholders. It's important to note that if you sell the mutual fund while there's capital gains being incurred on your behalf, you're not holding it at the end of the year when the fund makes those capital gain distributions. So that's something that kind of bites the continuing shareholders. So something to keep in mind there. The ETF options don't have that problem as much because they're set up a little bit different with their tax structure. So that's another great reason to use the ETF investment options if available. Hope this is helpful. I'm hoping to call in again later this month to provide some financial planning ideas at year end, some things to consider, and hopefully something to look forward to there. Thanks again. This is Danny calling from Financial Planner. Please tune into the blog and hope to speak to you guys soon. Thanks.
Yeah, Danny, thank you very much for calling in. We greatly appreciate it. It's nice having experts in our community who can listen to the podcast and add further flavor to it. So it's certainly always appreciated.
All right. Well, for the remainder of the show, I'd like to go ahead and open this up and bring in some voicemails from the community. And I wanted to start by playing a voicemail that we got from Hillary, which I think highlighted something that I know me and you have been grappling with in terms of how to balance new and old content. I think she makes some fantastic points.
Hey, Brad and Jonathan. My name is Hillary. I wanted to call and give some feedback. I have been listening to ChooseFI for over a year now. You actually played one of my voicemails on a podcast last year, which was so cool. But I wanted to give some feedback and start by saying thank you so much for creating this podcast, the Facebook groups, the community in general. ChooseFI is growing so rapidly and touches so many people. And your work and effort and passion really comes through, and we really appreciate it. Y'all are very inspiring and motivating. And I wanted to give a little feedback on the content, actually. I think you all strive so hard to find actionable tips and to always be talking about new content, new ideas, new strategies, and all of that is great, and it can be inspiring to hear new things. But I also just wanted to say that I am also motivated and encouraged when I hear about the fundamentals. I really appreciated episode 100 when you went back to the fundamentals and just talked about the why, talked about the steps to take to get rid of debt, to reduce your lifestyle, increase your income, just some of the fundamentals. So I just wanted to give that piece of feedback. I so appreciate the new points, the new actionable steps, the incredible, crazy pathways, the niche opportunities. All of those things are interesting to hear, but I think that long term, every once in a while, come back and talk about the fundamentals. I think it's going to be really grounding for the community. It's always motivating to hear those fundamentals again. So anyway, keep up the good work. That's just my 2 cents. Take it or leave it. Really appreciate all the work you do, guys. My husband and I are well down the path. It's so exciting. We're coming up on 30 and we really feel like we have a grasp on our finances, which not all of our friends can say. So thanks so much, guys.
Brad, I love this voicemail. It reminds me, it's so much of what you've made this point to me over and over again. Just because we've talked about it doesn't mean we don't go back.
Yeah, and it's hard because, Jonathan, you and I live and breathe ChooseFI, right? And in our mind's eyes, like, oh, we talk about VTSAX all the time, right? Or we had Jim Collins on, but the first time he was on was episode 19, and that was a year and a half ago or more. So it is that balancing act. And I think you and I need to do a better job of that on air, of just trying to both bring up new stuff, which is incredibly interesting and empowering, but also going back to the fundamentals of what FI means, what it means to be a member of this community, what are our fundamental tenets of FI. And I think doing both of those is really important.
And a huge thank you, Hillary, for the feedback and also the great idea there. We will certainly try to make a point of that. This next voicemail we got is from Lee. She has a question about traditional IRAs.
Good morning, Brad and Jonathan. This is Lee from Austin, Texas. I am calling with a traditional versus Roth IRA question, comment, concern. So I listen to you guys, I listen to Paula Pant, I'm listening to Radical Personal Finance, and I hear again and again that traditional IRA contributions are pre-tax. I don't think that's right. So if you're a W-2 employee and you say pre-tax to a W-2 employee, what they think is, oh, that's like my 401k contribution. No tax off the top, that's yanked out, that's put in my 401k, it never sees tax. That's not how traditional IRA contributions work. An employer is never going to segment and put a traditional IRA contribution into your account on your behalf. So the reality of it is that these are always funded with post-tax dollars. So I think where this pre-tax idea is coming in is that you get a tax deduction on a traditional IRA contribution. That's true, but that's subject to income limit. Believe for a married filing jointly couple, the modified adjusted gross income limit is $190,000. So if you get that tax deduction, the other thing that has to happen is you have to immediately take that money and put it back into a traditional IRA. I don't think any of these things are happening in real life. So I don't know why everyone is saying contribute to a traditional IRA. If that's the same post-tax pot of money that's funding it, if it's going into a Vanguard IRA, why would you ever do traditional? Why wouldn't you just do Roth, have your tax-free growth, and move along? Tell me what I am missing. Thank you so much. Bye.
All right, Lee, thank you for the voicemail. Yeah, there's a lot of information in there. And I think you got a bunch of things that I was definitely nodding along, agreeing with. And then I would probably slightly disagree with the conclusion, though. So let's go back to what I agree with. When you're talking about pre-tax, I do agree that many people consider that in their heads, it's something that comes out of your W-2 salary. And when you get your paycheck, that it's already taken care of. There is no question that that does not happen with the traditional IRA. I think in all cases, I'm not sure if there are any instances where that would, but let's just assume in all cases. So contrast that with a 401k where that comes through your employer, that comes through your salary, and you see it show up on your pay stub. We're talking about a traditional IRA. Clearly, that is money that got deposited to your bank, and then you personally need to make the decision to put that into a traditional IRA or not, or just to leave it in your bank account, right? Or put it somewhere else in Vanguard for your own taxable investing. All right, so now let's look at what happens when you actually do contribute to a traditional IRA. You set that up yourself. Let's say you go to Vanguard, you set up a traditional IRA account, and you send over the full limit. You send over $5,500 for tax year 2018. And that money is just sitting there in that traditional IRA. Hopefully you invest it in low-cost index funds or whatever you want to invest it in, and that just moves along. So from your perspective, you had the $5,500 sitting in your checking account, and now it's in this traditional IRA umbrella at Vanguard. I hear you about what you're saying. Like, it doesn't seem like anything happened in terms of tax, but the nuance is when it comes time to file your tax return, you get a deduction for that $5,500. So let's just assume for argument's sake, you're in the 15% marginal tax bracket. We're just looking at federal here. Your taxable income would go down by $5,500 when you put in your traditional IRA contribution. So again, just hypothetically, let's say your taxable income without including this, it was $90,000, and then it goes down to $84,500 after including that deduction for the traditional IRA. So now, all things being equal, this is just a back of the envelope math. I haven't run this through any kind of tax software or anything, but that reduction, if that full amount is in the 15% marginal bracket, you would get, like I said, that $5,500 deduction, and that would be, you multiply it by 15%, and your tax liability would go down by $825 in this case. All right, so 15% of $5,500 is $825. So now your actual federal income tax liability went down by $825 because of this deduction. So that's what we say when we mean this is pre-tax. All right, it's not coming through your payroll, your W-2, but it is going on your income tax return, which is all that matters. So at the end of the day, all that matters when we're talking about pre-tax, post-tax, any of this is what gets filed on your income tax return.
And the underlying strategy here, Brad, is that we are a community of people that are trying to figure out how to save anywhere from 20 to 50% of our incomes, which means that we just don't need every single dollar that we earn. We're using the difference to build a perpetual money-making machine. So when you then make the choice to walk away, to leave the job from which you were saving some odd percentage, you're going to, with a high likelihood, be in a lower marginal tax bracket. And so if we have a choice between when we're taxed, hey, do you want to be taxed when you're making the most and you're in a high tax bracket, or do you want to be taxed when you're in a lower tax bracket? We're saying, well, if we have the choice, I'd rather it be when I'm making less. It's as simple as that. Now, there are some individuals that are in a low tax bracket currently for various reasons. So maybe even up to like the 12% marginal tax bracket. That's when this all becomes a little bit less clear, and you can make a pretty strong case for looking at the Roth IRA. If that's you, then just be aware of that. If you're an extraordinarily low tax bracket, maybe a 0% tax bracket currently, well, then you should probably lock in the Roth. That's a good choice. And I would say you can make that case all the way up until about the 12% marginal tax bracket. And then from there, increasingly, all of your pre-tax buckets look very, very appealing.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think you need to look at where you are in your own situation. But yeah, just to make that clear, my hypothetical was just made up numbers with those marginal brackets, the 15%. Like that's not based on current brackets. I just wanted to use a nice, clear example. But yeah, to Lee's question originally, the traditional IRA definitely gets a tax deduction. So hopefully that is what's coming through here. And the Roth is funded with post-tax dollars because you're not getting a tax deduction now. So clearly there's no impact on your taxable income right now with a Roth IRA contribution, but then there's no taxable issues with this forevermore. So you have to make the decision for what works best for you, but understand that the traditional IRA, you get a tax deduction now, and a Roth IRA is going in with post-tax dollars, so there's no tax deduction.
It's hard to walk away from this because when you find time, just like Hillary was saying, when you find time to actually go back to some of the basics, you don't want to just kind of halfway it. It's kind of worth getting into the gritty just a little bit here. The traditional IRA caps out, as Lee was saying, right around 101,000. It's basically a non-issue anymore. So anybody that married, filing jointly, making over that amount, if they can use their 401ks, max out their 401ks to get down below those threshold limits to make it viable. There are other individuals that are in our community that are making 130, 150, people that are making upwards of $700,000. You got to kind of figure out where you are in this framework because there are thresholds at which there's nothing you can do to reduce your income enough to make those viable. So for the individuals that are making upwards of $200,000, they're not going to get access to the traditional IRA. It's just not going to be a viability. So they're maybe thinking, well, what can we do to restructure our accounts to get access to a Roth IRA? Sometimes that's the strategy. So, when you have a choice between pre-tax or post-tax Roth IRA, you're looking at your marginal tax bracket. But then at some point, you're also just looking at the thresholds, what's actually available to you. And then at some point, you're looking between whether or not you have access to the Roth and whether or not you can only use taxable. And so, once our pre-tax aren't available anymore, if we can still get access to some form of tax-protected account like a Roth, usually that's going to make sense. Then at some point that is no longer available. And then you're just plowing into taxable accounts, which for us, that's when we generally talk about setting up a Vanguard or a Fidelity account and starting to build VTSAX and some of these other vehicles.
Yeah, and people get very confused, understandably, with the term taxable accounts. I just look at this as savings. So instead of the money sitting in your checking account or your savings account or whatever it may be, you just happen to have it at Vanguard. And that money is invested in whatever you want, individual stocks or hopefully low-cost index funds or the like. But that's what we talk about when we talk about taxable investments. I know it's very, very confusing, but it's just whatever you decide to do with that money. So it's your choice ultimately, but rather than sticking it under a mattress or putting in a savings account making 0.01%, put it in Vanguard or buy rental real estate or do something with it. But that's the taxable investing that we're talking about here.
And we have a couple episodes that I want to point you back to if you're listening to the show and you haven't been with us since the very beginning. There are a few episodes that I just think are really, really core to this. I'd highly recommend you go back and you listen to episode 19 that we did with J.L. Collins talking about the simple path to wealth and the stock series. There's some advanced techniques where we go into this a little bit farther. Episode 28, we did kind of an order of operations talking about how to look at the traditional, the Roth, the HSA, and some of these other vehicles. And this content kind of builds, but Lee, we really appreciate you bringing this up and giving us the opportunity to kind of reference this and kind of roll through our mentality. It certainly is always an important conversation to have. Now, next I wanted to read this comment that we got from Ruth sharing how to protect elderly family members from predatory subscriptions. And she said, my 98-year-old uncle had no idea what recurring charges he had monthly. I called the bank to reinstate paper statements and found out there was a monthly charge for $14.99 my aunt had made years ago from an infomercial. If you have elderly parents or relatives, please check their finances. And, I would go so far as to say, don't just check theirs, check yours. It's amazing what can sneak up on you. But to reiterate her point, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, Brad, I remember there was a Consumer Affairs article, and I had to go Google it because it was back in 2015, that was highlighting an earnings report from AOL. And on that report, it was discovered that AOL still had 5.8 million users that were essentially paying for their email address. What had happened is they used to have a dial-up model. Dial-up basically just disappeared, but everybody assumed that their email, in order to retain it, they would just, I guess, need to continue to pay for it. And at some time, you just, for many people, they just forgot. I mean, this isn't like 5 or 10 people. At the time of this article, which I believe was like in 2015, it was something along the lines of 2 million people were still paying this recurring monthly fee. I wonder if anybody is still paying it. I tell you what, I don't have any data on this, but when someone tells me that they have an AOL email address, I'm asking them, are you paying for that? You are. Please tell me you're getting that for free at this particular point in time. My mom has an AOL email address, and you better believe I asked her, please tell me you're not paying for that. This is crazy. Essentially paying for something that you can't even use anymore. I mean, where would you even find dial-up? And to expand that out, how many people are still paying for like a Reader's Digest or a Wired magazine subscription or a free trial where they had no idea and they just keep getting it? And because they're not tracking their finances, they have no idea that they're paying that monthly recurring fee. Hey, if you get value for something and you read it every single time and you're using it, by all means. But many of us, just due to the nature of the way these trial subscriptions are set up, have recurring monthly expenses that, frankly, we just weren't aware of. And when maybe one is kind of innocuous, but when you add several of these that have been acquired over a decade or decades, I mean, this math adds up really, really quickly. And it's well worth it to understand where your money is going each month. And if there's too many line items when you're tracking it on Mint to even know, like it's overwhelming, that's a sign of bleed. I mean, you need to like reel that in and figure out, at least for a few months, where everything is going. Every dollar is accounted for. Because if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into any company's intentions or call them necessarily predatory. I mean, I'm sure there is much of that, but some of it can just be, this is the business model, and you just kept on paying. Your family members just didn't realize that you shouldn't be paying for email anymore, or you have some subscription that you never use, and it's time to get rid of it. So a review of your finances for anyone, especially like we're saying here for elderly family members and the like, that's probably more important. But any of us can take this to heart and say, go through and look at what your subscriptions are and say, am I really using this anymore? Is there a cheaper or lower cost alternative that I can do? Or am I just simply, is there no alternative that I even need, right? Like, am I not using this at all? I think this is important for any of us, not to mention certainly our elderly family members.
All right, Brad, this next voicemail that I want to play is from James. And this is an idea that really resonates with me, this idea of trading skills, almost using a bartering mentality.
I came to FI via my brother Mark a few months ago and have since gone on a tear of a lot of great content that has me thinking totally differently. I noticed I was spending a lot of money at the cafe right by my house. But the problem is I'm a graphic designer that works from home, and it's awesome to get out of the house every once in a while, get coffee, and do work from that cafe. I'm a regular there. I know and like all the employees. So I was really bummed to remove that from my routine. One day on a whim, I just asked the owner if they needed any graphic design help. They said they actually needed a t-shirt design, and that's totally in my wheelhouse. So I offered to do the shirt for trade. They gave me a $500 gift card, and all I did was a couple hours work to get them a great design. Now I get to say that I designed the shirt for the neighborhood spot, and I get to drink coffee there guilt-free. If there are any graphic designers or anyone that provides professional services of any kind, I encourage you to ask the owners and managers of your favorite local spots where you routinely spend and see if you can work out a trade. Thank you so much to Brad and Jonathan for all that you do. I'm not a big finance guy like my brother, but this show has outlined huge concepts that have given me a ton more agency over my money and my life in general.
He said he found the FI community and dove all in. This is an idea that's mind-blowing for me. And it doesn't have to be a huge idea, but it's just applying these principles in different ways.
Yeah, and stepping outside your comfort zone to offer something that probably before finding FI and ChooseFI, he would not have done this, right? But it caused him to think a little bit differently. And yeah, it's neat that his brother was the one who turned him on to this. And yeah, very cool, James. I love this. So drink that coffee guilt-free now. That's cool.
All right, well, unfortunately, that's going to bring this episode to a close. Now, as you know, we like to finish every episode by doing a drawing for a copy of a book that we have found useful, and there's 3 books that we offer. The first is J.L. Collins' book, The Simple Path to Wealth. The second is Dominic Cortuccio's book, Design Your Future, and the third book from Vincent Puglisi, Freelance to Freedom. If you want to enter the drawing, all you need to do is just go to ChooseFI.com/iTunes, follow the instructions there, and leave us a short written review on either iTunes or Stitcher, and then send us an email to feedback@ChooseFI.com letting us know that you left a review and what screen name you left it under. We give away one book for every 5 written reviews that we get, and we announce a winner on the Friday Roundup. Brad, how many winners do we have today?
All right, Jonathan, we have one winner today, and the winner is Neil. Neil left this on Stitcher and said, "The ChooseFI podcast is life-changing. I learned so many small practical tips, really life hacks that I've adopted into my life. By listening to this podcast, you will not just get so many resources and tips for saving money, but you will find yourself challenged on a weekly basis to optimize your life. If you are looking for one way to make your life better, just listening to this podcast will cause your life to be changed forever."
Wow, thank you so much.
That's amazing, Neil. Thank you.
All right, my friends, if you got value from the show, if you've been getting value from the episodes up to this point, just take 1 second and press the subscribe button on the platform you're listening to this on. Just lets the providers know you're getting value from the show and you want to be here when we produce additional content. All right, my friends, the fire is spreading. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to ChooseFI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.